Guys,
Take two.
welcome to the first ever Bigfooty podcast. With me tonight, I've got the Old Dark Navies from the Carlton Forum and Chief from Bigfooty. And in the background, lurking there quietly, will be Messenger and Devoid of Caring. Guys, it's been a big week in footy, as Eddie Maguire used to say, and there's a lot of issues that have come to hand. The footy itself was pretty generic in nature. A lot of people predicted the winners, no major upsets, so it comes down to the issues. So, what do you want to talk about?
Fully support the push in the back decision in Adelaide the other day. I thought that was just and fair.
Of course.
And what about the buddy suspension or lack of?
Just and fair again. I think any time that Hawthorn gets off on something like that, I think that's good for football, frankly.
Well, Otten's head didn't pop off, so I guess there's something to be said there.
No harm, no foul.
yeah. You see something like that, and then you see Jared Waite getting suspended for a week for rubbing noses, basically.
I thought it was a Maori greeting ritual. Actually, I was surprised he got rubbed out for that.
Dolphin kiss.
It's Jared Waite. It's in his contract. He's going to get rubbed out for being an idiot. So,
weeks for stupidity, I guess.
it was.
Yeah, it was highly predictable.
That was pretty much the softest free that's ever been paid. And if I can just revert to hyperbole straight away, in the history of football, but
In the history of the universe, really.
pretty much the history of the universe. But look, it's a moving feast, and in 3 weeks' time, we'll all be frothing at the mouth about something else. And I think our Crows brethren forget how many goals from free kicks inside 50 they got in that game. They got 4 goals from free kicks. They have nothing to complain about at all.
I mean, besides the guy nearly getting his head ripped off.
Yeah, look, that's just a flesh wound. It was fine. He didn't mean it. He's just misunderstood, buddy.
It was ugly, wasn't it? Though it was ugly. Oh, you had to fear for him immediately afterwards.
Oh, no question. But I think there was somebody who was trying to put the intentional and the manslaughter charge together on the forums this week, and I thought that was a little bit over.
Oh, you at least got to trial it.
Skip the tribunal, go straight to the Department of Public Prosecutions.
I think so. Do we have the death penalty? We don't have the death penalty in Australia. It's okay. Put it to the test.
Transportation, we can do that.
We can make it.
There's plenty of lawyers out there.
We sentence you to go to New Zealand. I think though that umpiring is a bit of a hot topic lately, with so many interpretations of the push and the and can you push in the back? Can you push in the side? Can you push at all? Can you block? There's a lot of general confusion as to what you can and you can't do. And Jeff Geeshan didn't really help that when he was trying to clarify matters on the couch on Monday night. I think they want to be very careful with this because it is confusing everybody. It's confusing players. It's giving us confused interpretations on the field, and it's costing people games. If you believe people in Adelaide, where things apparently happen right in front of them.
Right in front of me.
It did not cost them that game. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
Go on.
I don't know. I think there's merit there. I think.
That is absolutely. How far from the end of the game was that Thompson free kick? How far from the end of the game?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Another 10 minutes of play.
Yeah, sliding doors, mate. You never know.
Gwyneth Paltrow could be out there.
It's no different to Collingwood supporters blaming Wayne Harms for the 79 grand final, and the knock in from the boundary that happened like close to 3/4 time. They're still blaming for it.
And you still can't go near a Hawthorn supporter and mention Darren Goldspink in the 2001 prelim without heads exploding. Yeah. And I mean that in the literal sense. Like explode in front of you.
Some umpires have really done themselves no favours in the past. But if they don't get these interpretations right, there's going to be a lot of animosity going on.
Yeah, look, it really should be whatever the show of strength should be allowed, and really don't pay anything unless it affects the game, unless it's actually really having an effect on the contest. None of this, touching the back and the player's already on the ground and they fall down onto their back. You're not protecting anybody. That's not going to hurt anybody. It really should be something that could genuinely have caused injury or it's affecting the flow of the game. So leave it alone.
All right. Let's move it along a little bit. Chief's favourite subject for the week is the Essendon and its drug scandal. It's impossible to have a discussion about the goings on in football without bringing up what is probably the biggest story in football in recent times.
This is everybody's favourite topic for the week. It's not just mine. you know.
It is a very if our forums are anything to go by, it is a very popular topic.
Oh, look, I think we're at the point now where it's a question of whether Essendon can slide through a loophole, and it sounds as if they've got enough evidence to say that they've taken things that were not strictly kosher. But I mean, honestly, if all you can hang your hat on is we slid through the eye of a needle and escaped sanction, I don't know that's cold. I think that's cold comfort, really, isn't it?
I think it's. If nothing else, it has ensured a generation of ridicule along the lines of Carlton and tanking and Melbourne.
You know what
tanking
it's
like? And
salary cap cheating.
Yeah. I mean, these things tend to stick around in people's minds for a long time, and if nothing else, they're going to wear this for a long time.
Sure. This is a little bit different to Carlton though, because there's individuals you can pick out of this, and I think people are going to honestly ask questions about Joe Watson's Brownlow. If he's found to be one of the guys who took this stuff, and that's still in dispute, and he hasn't admitted to anything, but that's a face on the issue rather than a club necessarily. Or
well, this is the thing. I mean, Melbourne's tanking got them nowhere really. Anyway, I mean. And and if Essendon were middle of the table at the moment and all that sort of thing, people will be like, oh well, it didn't help them anyway. But they're flying high at the moment. But they, so
yeah. Look, when there's salary cap cheating, it's generally you've paid over the odds to keep one player, or two players, but in this particular case, you're looking at the potential of 22 players getting an advantage. That sort of gives you a little bit of a little bit of perspective as to the scale of something like this, if that's what's been happening.
Well,
it's even arguable that they got an advantage, to be honest.
Yeah, well, we don't, some of the stuff they're talking about, it's sort of, it's unproven, and they might have, lost a bit of cellulite or something like that, but.
There is a reasonable concern, though, that the stuff that they took last year would be impacting their performance this year. We got some reports when the thread started popping up that it was manifestly unfair to have that thread, but the discussion appears to be a legitimate concern when you consider Essendon a 6-0 and haven't even looked like losing, although that might happen this Friday against Geelong. But I think it's a legitimate concern. I mean, if Essendon took substances last year, it's reasonable to assume that that's had an impact on fitness this year.
I mean, if you can come out of a year, with fewer injuries and ready to go for the next year, that's even if they're saying, oh well, the drugs don't stay in your system that long, blah blah blah. But if it helped you set you up for your next year,
they did a training base. If they've taken this stuff and Nick Beddoes, I thought what Nick Beddoes said was interesting. He wasn't necessarily saying that they've got an advantage now, but they had a training base and they've been able to build on that training base the following year. So they still get the improvement in terms of their improvement in their training regime. But this 6-0, how good is that 6-0 though? If you look back at the form line, I'm just trying. I mean, GWS nearly pipped them, beat them last week. I don't know if the wins in Adelaide and Fremantle look as good as they might have looked 3 or 4 weeks ago. I mean, Adelaide have only beaten a couple of also ran teams.
Yeah. It's a bit like Port's 5-0.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They'd beaten almost nobody, and Port fans were all, "Hey, we're going to win the flag."
That's right.
But,
I mean, having said that, for a club that's only won in Adelaide about 4 times in the last 15 years, I mean, you take it. But the Crows are struggling right now.
yeah. So I'm finding it hard to believe that after Swatowski brought his report out, that there's no talk of anyone being fired. There's no talk of anyone standing down. It just appears to be being washed away, like nothing happened.
Yeah.
At
Well,
Essendon.
when you
I don't
pay someone to
understand how
write
that
a
can be.
report for you, you get the response that you want, don't you? You get the result that you're after.
It's a very yes
That-
ministry.
Don't ask a question you don't know the answer to.
Never hold an inquiry if you're guilty. But
I thought what was released was relatively forthright, to be honest. I didn't have any problem with what came out of it. I mean, he called a spade a spade. They had problems. They stuffed up. Nobody knew who was running what, and he said so. I mean, he didn't. It wasn't exactly a glowing recommendation of the
No, that's right.
procedural practices of Essendon Football Club.
No, and something will come out of that as far as bringing the game into disrepute.
you'd imagine
But I mean,
so.
it essentially amounted to sloppy running of the club.
Yeah.
I think
There doesn't seem to have been any sort of
And
talk about intentional this or intentional that. Just
Yeah. I hasten to add for our Bomber listeners that
we love you.
Yeah. look. As far as the way the club's been run, they've generally been accepting that it's not good, and they're not happy about that. And as far as sticking up for the other stuff, it's nothing that Carlton supporters didn't do over salary cap cheating, that Melbourne supporters didn't do over tanking. You stick with your own, and you fight until there's no way you can possibly justify it. So,
But when we did it, we were right.
well, that goes without saying.
Was Stephen O'Reilly one of the guys you overpaid, by the way?
Sorry.
Stephen O'Reilly, was he one of the guys you overpaid?
Yeah, that was a good move. Choose somebody that you trust implicitly. Sauce and Silvani and Bradley were the other two we offered payments to, and we knew they weren't going to, give it up too easily. But Stephen O'Reilly didn't really have any loyalty to us, so that was a pretty good move.
What do you expect from a guy from Freo?
I do think with Essendon there are a couple of built-in scapegoats in this, and I think Paul Hamilton's looking very, very good for having a few things laid at his feet ultimately, and Ian Robson, who I remember fondly when he was at Hawthorn, and then he became traitorous and went to Essendon, and this is his comeuppance. He's going to get it in the neck for being the CEO of Essendon.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
I'm being flippant, but I mean, I think that when they talk about process, he's at the top of that. He's at the top of that tree, and I do think that ultimately he may find himself looking for work next year.
Well, someone's got to take the bullet, and the Bucks got to stop somewhere.
Yeah, you just should go a little bit deeper than just looking for that, for a victim.
I don't think there's any way that once this all comes out, I don't think there's any way the AFLPA won't have something to say about the way the players were experimented on, basically, since that's what Essendon is more or less admitted to. There's no way the AFLPA can do its job and sit back silently on this if they have any credibility whatsoever.
That's what amazes me. People sort of defending this as we'll get away with it. That's there's no problems. There's a loophole. Well, the loophole is not a loophole. And then it's sort of you're thinking about your players. They've may or may not have pumped them full of God knows what. And there's the main concern seems to be getting out of it without any sanctions or anything. It's strange.
And from a Carlton supportive point of view, guys, I just want to shed the tag of the most unethical club in the AFL. So,
I don't know.
Look, as a Carlton supporter, it's often like we've never forgotten that Essendon were pinged big time for salary cap cheating before we were. So were Melbourne. But this is all glossed over by what we did in 2001, 2002, and rightfully so. We did it big time, and we did the time. But the previous offences that were almost just as big. I mean, Melbourne got fined 800 grand. We got done for just over $1 million. And Melbourne lost draft picks. Essendon got done for nearly 700 grand, and it was in a premiership year. These are facts that are often forgotten. And now you've got the whole drugs thing. I think Essendon have taken our crown.
We're all living in glass houses, don't we? Aren't we? Some people go too hard out of hatred. If you've got a genuine concern about performance-enhancing drugs in sport, then that's all well and good. But some people are going and just sinking the slipper because of tribalism and whatnot. And
it's entertainment for some people.
Yeah, look,
some days it's entertainment for me, but
It's entertaining for all of us sometimes.
Tanking, salary caps, injunctions, things like that. We've all got them.
There's nothing funnier than
what injunction?
Bleep that out. Bleep that out.
Sorry.
What? I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah, see?
What do you mean?
And look, it is sport for some people, but by the same token, there's a degree of denial amongst Essendon supporters, and I guess to an extent I can understand it. But there's those who, amongst the Bombers brethren who are just nothing to see here, move on, and I find that hard to swallow. I really do. I find that you read it and it just seems ridiculous to me. But I guess if it was my club, I don't know how I'd react, and I'm sure there'd be plenty of my brethren who'd perhaps react the same way.
It's not a good look, but it's not something you'd wish on any club, I don't think. I mean, if you could wish it on a club, I mean, you would. I don't think anyone seriously wants to wish wish this kind of thing on any club in a serious manner.
These guys and these players, I mean, we are talking about some of these guys are grown men, but it's hard. If you were one of those players and you were presented with paperwork and you were presented with medical experts and sports scientists, would you have let them stick the needle into you? I mean, as an 18-year-old, you might have done it.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. These are grown men for the most part, and they should have known better.
If you're there and you're saying this is part of the program, here's the paperwork. As Messenger said, here's the paperwork. Here's the experts, the doctors are there. You go here. You go. Are you going to be sitting there going, hang on, because you don't know, But by the same token, WADA has always said the player is responsible.
It's your duty to know.
It's your duty to know and that sort of thing. And you can bet everyone will be Googling all these chemical names from now on.
The 17-year-old gymnast at the AIS doesn't get this concession. They work on the same strict liability that the 18-year-old footballer does, but perhaps the institutional pressure for the footballer. And I mean, I work in the field. I work in healthcare, and I deal with. I've dealt with professional athletes in the past. Really, these kids, they're straight out of high school, straight on an AFL list. They're little boys. They're not adults in any real sense of the word, other than to say they've reached the age of majority. They're kids, and they go where they're sent. And I think there'd be a number of them who would have said yes sir, 3 bags full, sir, and done it.
That might be a mitigating circumstance, but they're still going to face a 6-month minimum ban.
Oh, I agree, and that's the way it should be. But I don't underestimate the amount of peer pressure some of these guys might have come under. And
absolutely,
it's different to the Spike McVeighs of the world who are adults and can make their own choices. But young kids straight off the list. I can't say that I might not have done it if I was in their boots. That's all.
All right. Well, I'm gonna call it into this initial podcast, guys. We've been going for 25 minutes or so, so I'd want to leave it there. It's a good note to finish on.
Right.
Cool.
You didn't do any highlights.
No,
for the week.
It's probably not not necessary. We've covered the big issues.
Yeah.
And
Friday night's game looks good. That's our highlight.
Oh, geez.
Friday night's game looks very good. Essendon and Geelong both up at the top there.
Let's not forget the grand final replays on this week too.
It's gone a bit under the radar, hasn't it?
Well, I must
Two
admit,
has-been teams, really, aren't they?
last year's news.
Yeah, I'm still
Oh God.
getting treated for post-traumatic stress after 2012's grand final, but yes, I'll go along with something to cower behind in case we start to get mown down in the last quarter like we did last year. But you never wash the stink of those sort of games off. You never do. It's awful. I understand why Geelong supporters are the way they are now after that match.
Did you have to do a sign off, Whoop?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. Yes, you got something?
Can I just say to all Essendon supporters, I got a letter from Salada saying you're all crackers. Don't worry about it.
You've been working on that one for ages.
He's been writing it down. He's got his joke book open or something.
Edit.
All right, guys. Thanks for all your input.
That's right.
I'd like to specifically thank ODN and
Thank you.
Chief and Messenger, who was going to sit there quietly and say nothing, and then apparently hijacked the discussion for most of the show.
Became the messenger hour, didn't it?
We'll change the name of the podcast.
I like to contribute. I like to contribute.
He's a giver.
I'm a giver. That's right.
A pitcher, not a catcher.
We'll see you all on the forums, guys. Have a good night.
See ya.
You too. Good night, gentlemen.